Awesome. So let's get started. Now that we know that everyone here is seeking a solution post lottery, you all, write in the chat if you already found out if you were selected and you're here because you are looking for guidance on how to navigate that moving forward with your company, or perhaps you haven't heard yet because Jeff will give us an update of the status of lottery results that are trickling out, but some were released yesterday, and we will talk about if you are not selected this week in the lottery, what are your alternatives? What are the solutions moving forward? And one of them is the Build Fellowship. But I will start by introducing our team. Caroline introduced herself. She's the Chief Marketing Officer of the Build Fellowship. My name is Danielle Goldman. I'm co-founder and executive director of Open Avenues Foundation, which some of you may have heard of, and CEO of the Build Fellowship, which we are really excited to dig into today to tell you more about cap-exempt H-1B work visas and additional alternate paths, because Jeff and I started Open Avenues Foundation and are currently building the Build Fellowship with Caroline because we believe that we can create pathways for foreign nationals to build careers and companies in the United States. And we know the value that all of you are able to bring to the US when you are able to stay. But we need to get creative because our immigration system is incredibly restrictive. And so Jeff is here with me to tell you more about various options and dive in. So Jeff, if you can introduce yourself and then we'll get rolling.
Thanks, Danielle. Yes, I'm Jeff Goldman. I've been practicing immigration law for 32 years. I started off at two of the country's largest corporate law firms in the country, running their immigration groups. And for the past 14 years, I've had my own immigration law practice based in Boston. And the vast majority of the work I do is employment-based immigration, specifically helping venture-backed startups. That's my main area, but my law firm is representing companies large and small for all of their employment-based immigration needs.
Jeff, are you there?
I'm here. What happened, Danielle? I have this tiny little screen. Yeah, take that off for a second so I can
What?
how did oh, okay. All right, I got it. Thank you. Today's immigration system, there's one of the biggest problems in our immigration system today, that is the H-1B is limited in number every year. The H-1B is the most common work visa for foreign national professionals, especially international student graduates from US colleges and universities who want to stay in the US and work in a professional field. There's only 85,000 H-1Bs every fiscal year, and they're selected in an annual lottery system. In the 2023 H-1B lottery a year ago, 780,000 employees were registered, and only 15% were selected. This year, the 2024 lottery ended this week. Companies were allowed to register foreign nationals for the H-1B lottery for about 16 days in the month of March. That ended it was supposed to end on the 18th. They extended it to the 23rd, and they shut off all the new registrations. And yesterday, they started posting the winners of who won the 85,000 H-1Bs for this fiscal year. I will tell you, while we don't know how many hundreds of thousands H-1B registrations were received this year, I can tell you that my law firm so far has won only 13% of the registrations we entered. It is possible that USCIS could still be posting the winners. In fact, I think they have to be, because I don't think they could have posted all 85,000 winners just in a 12-hour period last night. So I am expecting to see more winners tonight and tomorrow and maybe even throughout the weekend. But certainly by Monday, they'll be done posting the winners. You know if you won because your employer logs in to the portal and looks at your name, and if it says registered, it means you're still registered, you didn't win. But if it says selected, it means you won. And if you win the H-1B lottery, the employer has only until June 30th to file an H-1B petition for you. But it's a significant problem that we are limited with the number of H-1Bs every year.
And I just want to add that, I've been talking to a lot of attorneys over the last few weeks asking about where projections are in terms of the lottery this year, given that there was a new rule put out this year that was intended to limit the fraud that has been in the system historically, where individuals had multiple companies filing for them in the lottery. And uh, attorneys were saying, up to 40% was what they were really projecting this year. So when Jeff says, like, this could really increase over the next few days, we're hoping for many of you on the call today that that's exactly what happens, and that it does. Jeff was saying, for some of you on the call earlier, Jeff was saying his attorneys across the board are at about 13% today, but we're hoping that that increases over the next few days.
Um,
So we already are through the lottery. So let's talk about some of the options.
right. So if you don't win the H-1B lottery this year and you don't have another year left of OPT, you have to quickly start assessing all of your options. The O-1 visa is for people who are among the more extraordinary in their fields on an either national basis or international basis. The immigration regulations list 8 criteria or requirements that a USCIS officer will consider. And if you meet 3 of the 8, then you're extraordinary and you can expect an approval of the O-1. The 8 criteria are listed on my website and on every immigration lawyer's website, and you just need to Google O-1 criteria and they'll come up. But if you think you might meet 3 of them, you should have a consultation with an immigration lawyer, and I'm happy to give you that consultation. We don't charge for consults on people who want to know, do I have a good chance of winning O-1? The TN visa is only for Canadian and Mexican workers in very specific fields. Most of them are STEM fields. There's science and technology, engineering, math. Those are the fields of most of the TN occupations, but not all. So if you're Canadian or Mexican, you definitely need to consider a TN. L1 visas are for multinational companies. That means there's an office inside the US and the same company has a related office outside the US. It requires you to have worked for 1 full year outside the US. And then you could be sponsored for an L1 to come to work for the US entity after you've been 1 year outside the US. F1 CPT. Many of you have already been on F1 status, and you might know about CPT, Curricular Practical Training. This is offered only if one of your course requirements for your degree requires you to work off campus in some kind of a job or internship or experiential opportunity. It is possible for a university to grant CPT for full time on day 1, meaning the first day that you enter the university. So some people who have missed out on the H-1B lottery, who don't qualify for O-1, there is no multinational company for L1, they're not a Canadian for TN, they're re-enrolling at a university into perhaps a master's degree program. And they're enrolling at a university that has promised they will grant full-time off-campus work right on the first day of the program using CPT. This is a viable option. You just have to be extremely careful that you're working with a reputable university that truly does have a real educational program and graduates students with their degree from the program, because there's a lot of fraud out there. There are people posting that you can get CPT with this university, but the university doesn't really offer any courses and they don't graduate anyone. They just give out day one CPT. So you want to definitely be careful of that. And warning, if you do this, if you enroll in the same level program that you already graduated from, you don't get any additional OPT after graduation. So if you just got a master's degree, you just finished your OPT, and you're re-upping F1 to get day one CPT at another master's degree program, which you've already done, you're not going to get additional OPT after graduation. And now I do want to take some time talking about the more exciting alternative that we're hoping all of you will learn something about today, a cap exempt H-1B. So Congress has mandated that there are 4 kinds of organizations that can always sponsor an H-1B without entering the lottery: universities, government research organizations, nonprofit research organizations, and nonprofits affiliated with the university can sponsor a foreign national any time of the year without winning the lottery. Well, that's wonderful for those 4 organizations, and great if you have nowhere to go because you didn't win the H-1B lottery and you want to go work full-time for one of those 4 organizations. Good for you to know that they can sponsor you without winning the lottery. But it is also possible to be sponsored part-time for a cap-exempt H-1B by one of those 4 organizations. And now you're in the United States in cap-exempt H-1B status, working part-time for one of those 4 organizations, and suddenly there's a rule that permits any company to immediately file its own concurrent cap-exempt H-1B petition so that you can concurrently work full-time for this company at the same time as you're working part-time for the cap-exempt organization. I want to give you a very quick example. A university could sponsor you part-time, 5 hours a week, to be a teaching assistant, and they file an H-1B for you and it's approved, and you're here in the US in H-1B status. Now, the company you want to be working for full-time, even if they're not one of the cap-exempt organizations, they can suddenly immediately file their concurrent H-1B without winning the lottery, because you're piggybacking on that cap-exempt H-1B status you obtained from the university. And now you're legally working for 2 different companies at the same time in H-1B status. So Danielle and I and Caroline have been working on building the Build Fellowship, which will help lots of you out there and lots of companies be able to constantly get a concurrent H-1B because you will be working part-time for a cap-exempt H-1B employer. And Danielle's going to take you through this chart and explain to you how that works.
Thanks, Jeff. Awesome. So as Jeff said, there are 4 types of cap-exempt organizations in the United States, and one of them is a nonprofit affiliated with universities. So rewinding back to 2017, Jeff and I started Open Avenues Foundation, which was a nonprofit that we partnered with universities across the United States and built out a cap-exempt entity. And what we have built out of the Build Fellowship is a network of nonprofits that are launching fellowship opportunities for you to work part-time, training students at university partners so that you are able to be sponsored for a part-time cap-exempt H-1B at one of these nonprofits And then your company, as Jeff mentioned, can file a concurrent full-time cap exempt H-1B. And so when you work the 5 hours per week with one of our nonprofit partners, individuals are spending that time training the future workforce within your field. So if you're a software developer, you would be a software development build fellow, leading software development projects part-time for students at one of our at our partner schools. And this would allow you to continue to work full-time for your employer that files this concurrent cap exempt H-1B. You must remain employed in the fellowship program for as long as you want to maintain the cap exempt status with your employer. So you can be in the fellowship program for our minimum of 6 months. You might be in it for a year, up to 3 years, which is what we file for, and you can extend beyond that if needed. But essentially, everyone here knows, this is a way to really get around the lottery system if you are in a situation where you don't have another option. So just to give you an overview of where we have come to this point. So we have 175 fellows who have been sponsored, but with these part-time cap exempt H-1Bs, and they are working with students from our 12 college and university partners, and they have trained 1,000 students in educational programming in their field of expertise. The approval rate on the petitions that we file is 99%. So if you are in a situation where you're sitting there and you're thinking, am I qualified for an O1? Should I start a green card process, and you're evaluating your options, a lot of what you want to do right now is de-risk your current situation. You want to create a pathway for yourself where you feel some sense of certainty in this very uncertain world of immigration. The best thing you can do is create certainty where you can. And while nothing is 100% and nothing is guaranteed in the immigration space, we're really excited that our fellowship has this approval rate. And it's because we spent a long time building out a really robust and compliant program through the Build Fellowship. So the programs for 2024 are Open Avenues Foundation, which I mentioned before, that started 7 years ago and has 150 current fellows in the program. It says it's for both founders and mid to senior level talent who are in a variety of specialty fields, and the programming is fully remote. We have a new program at George Washington University, which is mostly for founders, but we'll probably bring in some key talent at small growing startups. That one is based in DC. And then the Dream Venture Labs program is also for founders and also for mid to senior level talent in a variety of specialty fields. They want to focus on biotech technology in Boston, and location is in Boston, but it's hybrid, and it is fairly flexible. So these are the programs that will have Build Fellowships launching in the next few months, where you could apply through the Build Fellowship website. When you are applying, we are looking for individuals who have at least a bachelor's degree or the equivalent work experience of a bachelor's degree, and you can get those evaluations done. We are looking for at least 2 years of work experience in a related field. So we want to make sure that you are an expert in your field in some way where you can add value to students. So your OPT, your time in OPT totally counts towards that experience. And if you have mentoring experience or you've worked with students in the past, that's an added benefit. You have to participate in our program, you must either have a company or an individual benefactor who is able to pay for the fellowship program and take on the financial commitment. You can never pay for your own filing fees and petition that you are filing for yourself for an H-1B. That is against the rules of the Department of Labor, and we absolutely abide by that within this framework of the Build Fellowship. So the fellowship itself must be paid for by a company that wants to sponsor the concurrent visa or an individual who wants to support your fellowship. For the 5 hours per week that you are working for Open Avenues, we talked about how you're working within your field of expertise. What I didn't mention yet is that you're leading projects that are within your field. So you are leading a project that might be scoped, you're a biotech professional and you are creating you're having folks actually analyze a flow cytometry data chart. There's a ton of different projects that our fellows have scoped and led and in a variety of fields because you're the experts. So you will scope a project in the field that you know and lead students through that in sometimes one-to-one sessions and sometimes group projects. And we have a really exciting new education platform that we're launching where fellows will be leading these projects off of. And fellows aren't just getting a visa from this. We have testimonials and experiences that have been shared from many of our fellows that show this is more than just this immigration solution. Our fellows are able to give back to society, to train students within their field, to learn how to be a better leader. And that's a really exciting opportunity. It feels really good to take the time out of your day to be able to give it back to someone else. And that's absolutely what our fellows are doing with this through this fellowship program. So, timeline of the whole process. We do an evaluation and a contracting process that takes 2 to 3 weeks. So you are nominated. You can go right to the Build Fellowship website today and you can nominate yourself, or you can have a company nominate you for the fellowship program. We will look to see if you have the preliminary qualifications and we'll send you an application to actually apply. Once we receive that application, we will evaluate the application. We will, go through a meeting with your company or with your benefactor, and we will sign a contract. Once that's signed, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get an approval on a cap-exempt H-1B with one of our nonprofit partners. And then once you have an approval for a cap-exempt H-1B, the very next, in the few days following your approval, as soon as the very next day after we receive the approval notice, you will be able to have your company file a concurrent cap-exempt H-1B on top of the H-1B that we file. So the financial commitment is $15,000 to $18,000 upfront. It depends on the size of your company, but right now, most companies are in the $18,000 range. It's also a monthly fee of $1,300 once you start the fellowship program. These are the program costs. This is how we run our education programming and workforce development programming. And then the salary share is actually a split of the salary you receive from the full-time employer. It covers the 5 hours per week that you will be working in the fellowship. And if you're offered so the way it works is if you're offered $100,000 for salary, we will calculate 5 hours a week at the fair prevailing wage. And let's say it's $8,000. We will actually pay you the $8,000 through our payroll, and the remaining $92,000 will be paid from your company to you on their payroll. So you are made whole at the $100,000 that was committed from the company, but a portion will come through us. So it's not an additional fee. We don't call it a fee, but it is part of this whole financial overview. So that's it for the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Jeff and I are able to answer questions in the Q&A, or you can put them in the chat. The first question is, does the fellowship have partners or offer support where foreign nationals can seek full-time employment? At this point, we do not. You can definitely go to our website and look at the list of companies. If you go to there's a place where you can look at the company partners, and if you press see more, you can see all of the companies where they have had a fellow in our program. And that's a great place to start because those companies have all demonstrated that they are willing to go above and beyond for top talent.
Danielle, I have a question that's among the most common questions I get from Build fellows or people interested in the fellowship is how long does one need to stay in the Build fellowship? And as Danielle alluded to earlier, you you would want to stay in the Build fellowship until you no longer need it. And you no longer need it when either you win the H-1B lottery and the following October 1st arrives and you are starting in regular H-1B status, then you no longer need to be in the cap exempt H-1B status and you no longer need to continue with the Build fellowship. Or maybe over your first year in the fellowship, you've really been working to build up your credentials for an O1. And that the issuing of an O1 status would mean you no longer need to be in the Build fellowship. It could be that your employer has started the green card process for you. And while it might take 2 years, maybe you've lost the lottery again the next year, but suddenly the green card process has gotten to the point where you are issued a work authorization document as part of the green card process, and now you no longer need to be in the Build fellowship. So the idea is to get you into the fellowship because it's an amazing solution when there's no other solution. And once you're in, the idea is to start planning on how you'll eventually be able to get out.
Great. The next question was, and I understand that someone wrote that the chat is disabled, so please type your questions in the Q&A. The next question is this program helpful for me to build my profile for an
You pause, Danielle. Is the program helpful to me to build a profile for an EB2 national interest waiver? Possibly. An EB2 national interest waiver, first requirement is you must have an advanced degree. Second requirement is you have to be working in a field that has substantial merit and national importance. Teaching part-time, being a part-time fellow and working with the future workers of America and training them with hands-on learning opportunities is definitely helping build up one of the national importance and substantial merit to your application. There's still a few more requirements for the national interest waiver that I don't think the fellowship actually helps you with, but it certainly does help a little bit, and it certainly helps you stay here legal while you're looking for your next option, such as a green card.
Great. The next question, and I will say that I have written multiple letters for fellows in our program who are applying for a national interest waiver about their work that they have done for Open Avenues Foundation. So in the Build Fellowship. So that's a factor. Can a benefactor be a spouse or family member or a friend? The answer is yes. An individual benefactor cannot be the recipient of the H-1B, nor can they be a dependent on that H-1B. So as long as your spouse or your family member is not on an H-4 visa that off of your cap exempt H-1B, then they can apply as your benefactor for the program.
The reason, I think it's important to explain the reason. The US Department of Labor has clearly stated that the foreign national being sponsored for an H-1B may not pay any of the fees associated with the H-1B. It did not say that all fees must be paid by the employer. It does not say all fees must be paid by any particular person. It only says that you, the foreign national, cannot pay the fees. And that's why we are of the opinion that the benefactor can be an individual person other than you.
If I approve, okay, someone's asking if they're approved for a cap exempt H-1B, do they only have to work for the nonprofit? I'll just clarify as best I can. The way that this works is if you are approved for a cap exempt H-1B with one of the Build Fellowship nonprofits, you remain employed by that nonprofit as a fellow for as long as you want to maintain cap exempt H-1B status with your full-time employer. So, you can't just get into the fellowship program, apply for a cap exempt H-1B with your full-time company, let's say it's Amazon, and then leave the fellowship and be on a cap exempt H-1B with Amazon. You must remain in cap exempt H-1B status with the cap exempt entity to maintain the cap exempt H-1B. So
Because you've not won the lottery. So Amazon cannot have a cap exempt H-1B without you also being concurrently employed by one of the four cap exempt organizations. And likewise, you can't just suddenly say, oh, I think I'll start up my own company and just jump and sponsor myself for an H-1B. You can't, you haven't won the lottery. So unless you are continue to be employed by either Open Avenues or George Washington University or any of the nonprofits working with Build Fellowship, you just can't jump and be employed by someone else.
the next question was about getting hired at one of our listed company partners if the Build Fellowship will collaborate to sponsor the candidate. It depends. The companies there have done this for employees in the past who are highly valuable. So if they are hiring you and you come to them and say, hey, I'd really like to work for you, I would like to, I'd like to explore the Open Avenues pathway or one of the Build Fellowship pathways, you absolutely can try that and they will know what the program is. And 99% of them have had a good experience. So the chances that they're willing to do this are more likely than another company that doesn't know about this yet, but absolutely not guaranteed. We don't have a partnership where they automatically work with us for any new foreign national hire. Someone asked if my full-time employer terminates the employment, does the cap exempt go invalid? And does the fellow need to be employed full-time or can they just be a fellow? Great questions. So the first one is the answer is that when an individual, and frankly, I'll be honest, we're in a very volatile economy right now and have been for the last couple of years. And so we've seen layoffs, right? There's been tons of layoffs, and our fellows have been subject to some of them. We have a policy at our nonprofit organizations that any employee, not just the fellows, is subject and eligible for a 6-month unpaid leave of absence. So in that case, our fellows are able to request that unpaid leave of absence and maintain status while they look for another job. Does the fellow need to be employed full-time or just be a fellow? Right now, the answer is technically either. You could just be a fellow, but right now we're looking at candidates that have that concurrent employer. We will take applications from individuals who do not, but we are looking for, individuals who ideally have that concurrent employer to move forward with. Costs of the program from the company and the petitioner side. So the way that we structure the costs are that you, as a foreign national, are not responsible for these fees. The $18,000 and the $1,300 per month are fees that are invoiced to the company that wants to keep you in the United States. Many of these costs, by the way, are actually lower than it would take to replace a candidate. Or recruiting costs for recruiting someone for a role. So we have many, many companies that are paying these fees on behalf of a foreign national. The way that, I recommend if you're going to a company and you're not already an OPT If you're going to a company and you're trying to get them to do this for you, it makes sense to try to negotiate this into your total compensation package, right? Sometimes you might ask for professional development funds or a bonus structure or something along those lines. Instead, try negotiating this fellowship into your compensation package. Take a little bit of a lower base compensation and suggest that this be part of that. You have to stay above the fair prevailing wage, of course, but the reality is sometimes this is existential for your career. And of course, I want everyone to get paid as much as possible, but sometimes this comes down to the finances. And if so, there's ways that you can be smart about positioning this. The salary share is structured where the company pays a portion of the salary through the Build Fellowship so that we can pay you for the fellowship program. If it's an individual benefactor, it's the same thing. They're paying a portion, they're paying that amount, that the 5 hours per week. You ultimately will get that amount minus the taxes. So you have to note that if it's an individual benefactor, there are the tax components will be another additional cost. Someone asked if that they say they see that this could become very popular, will we set a limit of the number of fellows? The answer is no. We've built out infrastructure now to be able to expand the number of fellows. We knew that this was becoming a popular program. We saw the demand, and we decided to create the Build Fellowship network of nonprofits so that we weren't just limited to Open Avenues Foundation. What is the requirement to maintain the H-1B cap exempt visa status for 5+ hours? So,
I
yeah,
can
go
jump in
ahead,
there.
Jeff. Please, yeah, thank you.
The requirements are exactly the same as the requirements for all H-1Bs. There must be an employer offering a job that is a specialty occupation. So in the case of Open Avenues Foundation, the foundation must offer you a job for 5 or so hours a week that is a specialty occupation, meaning that the job duties are so specialized and complex that only one with a specialized degree can do the job. And the next requirement is the employer, in this case, Open Avenues Foundation, must pay the fair wage on an hourly basis for the number of hours you're working. Those are the basic requirements and no different than all H-1Bs.
Awesome. Someone is looking for clarification on the $1,300 monthly fee and if that includes the salary share and how they're related. They are not related. The $1,300 monthly fee is a fee on top of the salary share. The salary share is a separate 5 hour per week amount that is paid back to you minus the taxes. But the $1,300 monthly fee is how we fund the educational programming, the work we do with students. It funds the entire operations of the organization. So that is a cost on top of the salary share.
I'm going to take the next one
Yeah,
from
go ahead.
Damien. And hello, Damien. I know we have a call scheduled for next week. Damien's asking, can the Build Fellowship Program deduct the $1,300 monthly payment from the salary pay instead of invoicing that amount to the concurrent employer or the full-time company? The easy answer, absolutely not, because the Build Fellowship and the nonprofits that are employing the foreign national for the 5 hours a week must pay the fair wage. It cannot pay below the fair wage. And if we start deducting the $1,300 payment, there won't be any fair wage being paid to the foreign national. So the $1,300 is a fee to the employer, the full-time concurrent employer, or to the individual benefactor who has agreed to take this on, and it is separate and distinct from the salary pay.
The next question was about the specialty occupations that we work with and accept into the fellowships. So we don't have you know what? You can actually go to our website for Open Avenues Foundation at least and see examples, I'll drop it in. But we have you can see from these micro internships that we launch, we have a variety of specialty occupations. Here we have biotech, business, we have data science, engineering, finance, software development, but we've really expanded this year. So if you have an urban planning background or graphic design, we've done those specialty occupations. We have recently done a lawyer for a specialty occupation. So we are willing to take a look. The key is that you have a degree in the field in which you are working.
Next question is, can I secure a cap exempt H-1B via consular processing? And the answer is yes. There's two ways to get into H-1B or cap exempt H-1B status. The first way and the most common way is you're here in the US and you're in F1 OPT and you file an application to change your status here in the US and you're asking the USCIS to automatically change your status from F1 to H-1B. And that can be done if you're legally here in the US. You could also get H-1B status by getting it outside the US at a consulate in your home country, at a US consulate in your home country. That's called consular processing. So the employer could file the H-1B petition, but instead of asking the government to change your status, they ask the government to simply notify the US consulate in your home country that the H-1B petition has been approved, and you will go to the consulate and get an H-1B visa there and then enter the US in H-1B status. It certainly is much, much, much easier if you're doing a change of status here because it avoids any complexities at a consulate, but it is possible.
Okay. Someone asked, how much can I earn from the fellowship? I'm curious to know the range, lowest to highest, and the average. So, first of all, when you say earn, it's actually a portion of a total salary. If you are employed by a company, it's going to be a portion of a total salary. So it's not additional earnings on top of your salary that you already have been committed to by your company. I want to be clear about that. It's a portion of that salary. If it's an individual benefactor, it is, depending on who it's coming from, it is additional earnings. But on top of, a different salary you may have. The range is hard to say because every single county in every single state in the US has a different fair wage for every one of the specialty occupations in the United States. You can go to, I'll drop the link in a minute, but there's a database where you can look up the different specialty occupations based on the state and the county you live in and look at the fair prevailing wage, and you will see the hourly wage and you will understand what you would be paid for 5 hours at that hourly wage. And we will definitely drop in the website. So I'm going to drop in the FLC data center on this last question. And that's where you can take a look at your, can you see that? I hope so. And then I'm going to put the buildfellowship.com right in here. And the buildfellowship.com, if you go to the website, you are able to fill out a nomination form. That nomination form will allow you to communicate with our team and start filling out what really begin the process of joining the Build Fellowship. I also will be dropping in on that same. I'm going to drop in on this last question right here on consular processing. I'm just going to drop in our community page. Please take a look at that link. Our community page, if you go to www.buildfellowship.com/community, I will show you here. Here is where you are able to join our network. We will be sending out links to future webinars, applications, opportunities that we have. One of the things that I'm building with the team is an O1 hackathon opportunity where you can actually work towards building your O1 case. So there's a lot of value you'll get from the community besides joining the Build Fellowship itself. If this is something that the Build Fellowship is something you think you would like to join throughout, at a different point throughout the year or next year, this might not be for you now, but you can absolutely, um, uh, really look at this for the future and join the community now. Connecting with alumni, you can connect with them on LinkedIn. If you go to Open Avenues Foundation, you'll see the alumni in the program, so feel free to reach out to them. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you. And we will send out the fees. It's 18,000 initiation fee. That's when we apply. That includes all of the legal fees, the filing fees, and the work that we're doing to set up the fellowship. It's $1,300 per month. And then there is the salary share. Great. All right, everyone. I hope you join the community. I hope you join a future webinar. I really hope for many of you that you get good news about the lottery, but if not, that's why we are here. So please reach out if there is anything you need.